Hey everybody, this is Jim the Tabletop Engineer, and welcome to a live stream. I think I'm live. It's always hard to tell sometimes. I don't do these enough to make sure that I've got it going, but I see the live button. I see it counting 10, 11. So, okay, we're good. Um, this is just, I'm trying to make this a weekly kind of thing. Nothing formal. It's not scripted. Just to catch you up on what I'm doing in my workshop, what I'm currently working on, what I'm playing, those kind of things. And some weeks it'll be a lot of stuff. Some it won't be much. But this week I do have some good things to share with you. These are in no particular order. I'm just grabbing what's sort of in front of me. I had a friend that I met last year at Mythic Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you have never been to Mythicon, formerly known as the Mace Convention, uh, it's held in November in Charlotte, and I want to say it's usually about six or 700. I could be wrong. I want to say 700 sounds right. Um, it's I call it the little convention secret. Nobody knows about it, or most people have heard about it, but most people have not attended. And it really is just an amazing little convention. I'll be going again this year, but I met a friend last year who just put me on to another skirmish war game. I don't need to be buying anymore, and I have been being very disciplined in not buying a lot of new games. As a matter of fact, I've been selling off on eBay and donating games that I no longer play. I'm doing that to save up some money to possibly get another 3D printer, which we'll talk about in a moment. But anyway, he mentioned a new game that he picked up, and he told me I should really look into it because he wants to play it at Mythicon. And so I went and I watched some videos and I checked it out, and yes, it's pretty cool. I went and bought the core rule book. It's called Mutant Zone Wars, or Mutant Year Zero Zone Wars. This is the core rules right here. Actually, no, it doesn't say core rules there. Where does it say core rules? It doesn't say core rules on the actual box, but the orange one is the core rules. There is a blue one that's the same. It's the same price, which I'm going to talk about that in a second. Um, this comes with 10 miniatures, enough for two players to have five each. It's set in a post-apocalyptic mutant setting, and I have to admit, I've read the rule book, and the rules are pretty cool. They're not like anything I've really played before. Well, that's not true. For instance, players take turns by drawing tokens out of a bag, and that's very similar to like uh, I just went blank on it. Just went blank on it. Oh well, it'll hit me in a minute. But it was almost on the tip of my tongue. Golly, I hate when that happens. Uh, the military game, I just can't believe I won it. Anyway, draw tokens out of a bag. I'll keep moving on. But most of this game is token based. I haven't punched them out yet. It does come with a folded uh, t- map, a game surface to play on. I think it's two sided. It is. It's two sided. This is interesting. It comes with punched out terrain. It only comes with a few sheets. Looks like three sheets of it, and it's enough. I mean, you're talking about a small skirmish game for two players. I don't know if this game is going to be expanded with more miniatures, more factions. I hope so, because if I play it and I like it, I want to know that there's additional characters and minis and things like that. Uh, it is a dice driven game, dice and tokens. So there are types of dice. There are the standard core dice, and then there are what's called I think they call these the mechanic dice or something like that. Guns and special abilities and stuff will add the black dice to the yellow dice you roll. And in this case, there are symbols on them, like the nuclear symbol or the hazard symbol. Those trigger things like allowing you to use mutant powers, hits from weaponry. The numbers, I'm trying to remember what the numbers have to do with it. The numbers do come into play with some things, but it's mostly the symbols. You're rolling to try to get those radiation and biohazard um, symbols. There are also symbols that will break your weapon or like cause it to misfire, not misfire, jam or break. I think, but you can repair it in game. Finally, there are cards for the 10 miniatures and cards for the weapons and powers and things that you get. As you can see, I haven't opened it yet. I need to do that. Here's what I really love about this game, the miniatures. The miniatures are heroic size, which I think is that 32 millimeter or 50 millimeter. I want to say it's somewhere between 32 and 50, but they are really well done. They're not painted. They're given a coating of some shader so that they don't look completely flat. You could play these on the table, and they look pretty good with that shading built in. This is a duck with a crossbow. Sold. I saw this. Actually, no, I saw this, and then I saw the raccoon with a shotgun, and then I saw the rabbit with a pistol, and then the boar hog with a mace, and the other one, the fifth one, is I guess it's an antelope or maybe a moose. I think it's a moose. It's the biggest one on here. It's the tallest one. So there are five that are from the animal mutant side, and then there are five that are like human, but mute. They're like a deep sea diver suit. I can't get this thing. And this guy's got a chainsaw. Um, looks like one with wings. It's very Gamma World feel to it. A woman with looks like a laser pistol. Can't tell what her powers are. And then some mutant looking thing, really kind of weird looking. The other box. Okay, so first off, you should know that the box is, I think, retail $70. You may be able to find it 20% off at some game stores if you're lucky. So it comes with what's called the core rules, and the second box has its two factions are robots and a psionic mental power team. It comes with the same number of miniatures, same amount of cards, same little mini cards. I think it comes with dice, but it requires the core box. It does come with a rule. Instead of the rule book, it comes with another, is it 5 or 10 scenarios? I can't remember. It's 5 or 10. So the book that connects extra scenarios. The problem I have with that second box is it's the same price. It's like retail 70. You might be able to get it for 50. It comes with the same minis, same amount of cards and stuff. So I get that. It's basically the same box. You just don't get the core rules. But putting it at the same price, it should have been marked like $10 cheaper because it's an expansion. You cannot play it without the core rules. And I don't understand why they priced it the exact same as the core rule box. It does have pretty much the exact same amount of content in terms of cards, dice, that kind of stuff. But again, it's just odd. I thought it would be a little cheaper. All right, so that is the newest game that I purchased. I want to paint these minis up, and November is a long way away. I might be able to find a group of players who are playing it locally at a gaming store, and if I do, maybe I can get in a game before November. Otherwise, it'll be November when I get to play it, and that gives me plenty of time to paint those minis and stuff like that. Okay, what next? I have been playing a game called 2D6 Dungeon. It is a solo dungeon crawl. You roll dice. You explore a dungeon up to 10 levels for the campaign if you want to play the campaign, or you can just do one-offs. You level up. You find treasure. You fight monsters. It's really cool. I have been posting. Right now, I think there's just 2 videos out. It's an ongoing series. I'm just going to keep playing, and if I die, I'll start a new character and keep going. But it's very fun, and I'm getting a lot of the details of the rules ironed out in the first few episodes. But I'm already up to episode 7 that I've videoed, so I'm going to be like 2 a week. So I've got like almost a month's worth, actually a little more than a month's worth already filmed, and as I was playing the game, I was having to track a lot of things. You're tracking your XP, your health. There's something called a shift die, which is a D6, which allows you to modify the dice you roll. You can do it up or down. depending on how many, what the number is, d6. So if it's two, you could shift one die up two positions or two die up one position, like that. You also have dice that track your armor. So your armor might block a certain dice roll if the enemy rolls like two dice and one of them is a six and your armor has a six assigned to it. You might be able to block some damage. You also have cards involved. There's dice, cards, and then there's the paper, drawing the map and stuff like that. There's a character sheet. It's a lot of it's not a lot of tracking, but on a table when you're trying to film it from the top down or from the side, it's a lot going on. So being who I am, and having a laser cutter and a 3D printer, I always am trying to find ways to make my gaming less stressful and more organized. And so I cut out this really simple two-layer, you can see how it's two-layer board. It allows me to track the health, the XP, the shift die, and the armor. This is for a card I put in there, and it tracks something called fatigue. In here is where I have my graph paper and my notes that I draw the dungeon. And then up here are 4 slots that I can put the cards for the creatures I encounter. There are some like player guide cards for shortcut, like things you don't do often. They're quick reference cards. I just threw those up there. I made this as a one-off, just something for me, but I've already sold 2 of them. 2 players who did 2d6 saw it in my videos and reached out to me and asked me to make them one. So I made them one, and it doesn't cost a lot. If you're interested, reach out to me, Jim's Workshop at fastmail.com. The cost depends on where I'm shipping it to, because it has to be shipped flat like this, and it's a little oversized, so it doesn't fit in a standard envelope. So if you're interested in one, reach out to me and I'll make you one. I don't sell these on my Etsy store. I just can't imagine that the demand would be super high for it. So these are going to be one-offs. If you want one, reach out to me. All right, so 2d6 dungeon. I am also I've also started playing a custom Frostgrave game called Beneath the Ice. It takes place beneath the frozen city, and I'm using 3D tiles that I'm printing to create the map as the scenarios are released. I also am doing a Relic Blade. If you don't know Relic Blade, now everybody I encounter who knows me through my videos knows about Frostgrave. I've played it a long time. I talk about it. People find my videos. Frostgrave is and remains one of my absolute most favorite skirmish war games. I will play it anytime, anywhere. I have just so much love for that game. But I also discovered a few years ago this game called Relic Blade, and I cannot believe it took me this long to really knuckle down and start playing it. I have played it. I've played it against a couple people at a local gaming store. They met up as a group. I missed one gathering, which really irked me because I don't get to play Relic Blade enough. But then the creator, Sean Sutter, came out with a Kickstarter that offered up solo rules and a solo campaign. It's called Catacombs of Corral. And so I sat down with it and I started putting together a plan. I had to make some custom terrain for it. These little boxes that his way of attacking a custom campaign is really, really well done. He came up with a certain set of terrain sizes, like 4x8 and an 8x8 and a 2x4 and things like that. And he just arranges these like a puzzle to create different layouts for the solo campaign, the campaign scenarios. And I just a really cool way to do it, because you could share it with your game players and they don't have to have a lot of custom terrain. They just need these pieces that they can mix and match and switch them around. So I took that to heart, and that's why I 3D printed a lot of these dungeon tiles, because I came up with just a small subset of sizes, and I'm using that to create these underground passages and rooms for my solo Frostgrave game. And so far, well, today or tomorrow, I'll be recording the 4th scenario in that campaign. So far, the dungeon tile part has just been really, really, it works. It's cool. It looks good on video. They're colorful, but they can be quickly rearranged and broken down. And then when it's time to design another scenario, I start working with the tiles to figure out what I can make with just those basic sizes, right? So when I released the campaign, I told everybody you need this size terrain. You need a 12 by 12, an 8 by 8, and a couple other sizes. And then that's it. You could make those out of foam, 3D print them. You can make them out of paper. You could even use a dry erase board. It doesn't matter. I just, by limiting myself to a certain number of them, I can sort of guarantee to my players that, look, you won't have to go crazy looking for terrain. Now, Relic Blade, as I mentioned, uses those custom blocks. Let me show you one. I've got one here. So this is the 8 by 8. Okay, I was going to make them out of foam, but I've gotten to where I just don't like foam tiles anymore. They're too light. You can put screws in the bottom to give them some weight and stuff like that. But these are printed on a wood base that I laser cut real quick and just glued together. Then I glued a 1/4-inch piece of foam on the top, sliced it with a grid, textured it, gouged it, primed it, painted it, and then hit it with Mod Podge. And so it's very rugged. I have an 8 by 8. I have a 4 by 8, a couple 2 by 4s. I can't remember. There's a bunch. I think there's a total of 7 of these. 7. And he mixes these around to create there's also this is 2 inches. He has some that are 1 inch. So you have like steps and elevation, stuff like that. So that is for the Relic Blade solo campaign. But there is a ton more for Relic Blade that takes place upstairs on the surface, but they're not solo games. Almost all of the content for Relic Blade in the rulebook and some of the expansions is player versus player. Now, in this world, you have 2 factions. You have the Advocate and the it's early for me right now, trying to get my brain right. The Advocate and the Adversary. Advocate and Adversary. And if you play versus an opponent, one of you will play the good guys, one of you will play the bad guys. And that's a subjective term because I really like the battle pigs. I know they're bad. I know they're the bad guys, but I like to run them as the good guys. I think that they're almost all of the shows are player versus player. And when you buy, Sean also offers, when you buy a set of miniatures, like he sells miniatures individually, but they're usually like the hero. They're like the more powerful ones. You can buy like a band of battle pigs, for example, or a band of gnome warriors. And inside each pack comes with like 3 to 5 miniatures. And there's your team, right? It also comes with the cards, because this is a card game and a dice game and a miniatures game and a terrain game. It scratches 4 different wargaming things for me. So inside those packs that he sells, he also gives you a sheet that folds out and has a unique scenario that just comes with that particular set. And so you can get extra scenarios that way. There are some people out there that are releasing custom scenarios and things like that. But those of you who know me, you know that I tend to play a lot of games solo. My boys, they have their lives. They're both teenagers now. They come and go, and they just don't want to play with dad. And I can't always get to the game store conveniently to play these games. For example, the Relic Blade crew here in Atlanta, they don't meet that often. I think maybe once every 2 or 3 months, they'll try to have a get together. And if 2 people might show, 10 might show, you just never know. So I have sort of resolved myself that, solo games, if it doesn't come with solo rules, I may or may not buy it. By the way, Zone Wars does come with solo rules, just so you know. I forgot to mention that. So Relic Blade, all these campaigns, but they're player versus player. So I am I'm slowly going through them, and I am converting them over to solo versions, but they're modified a bit, because when Sean Sutter released that Catacombs of Corral book, he released the solo rules. And so I'm having to sort of backtrack and take those solo rules and retrofit them to the original scenarios he did, and it's forcing me to make some changes. You know, anytime you have an AI driven opponent, there's going to be some of that. But what's really interesting is Sean had this. I won't say it's unique because I have seen it in another war game, and I'll tell you what it is. He has this chart for every scenario, every solo scenario in solo campaign has this chart, and this chart is random, and you roll on it when one of your characters wants to take a turn, and it's possible when you roll it that the bad guys may get to jump in front of you and take a turn, or it may spawn a new monster, or you may roll lucky and you get your full action right up front and you get first hit. It's a very interesting mechanic, and I've seen it in a game called 5 Parsecs from Home. If you've played that game or you've watched any of my videos, 5 Parsecs uses a similar mechanic. You roll initiative dice, but your characters are assigned like ones and twos that get to go first. Anyone else that doesn't roll like a one or two, and you can increase that number as you level up. Mostly it's ones and twos. For when you roll 3, 4, 5s, and 6s, those don't get assigned to your characters. It goes to the enemy, and the enemy's done. Anyone else who didn't get a die assigned to them gets to go. It's called the fast phase, enemy phase, slow phase. It's, to me, it is so much more creative and authentic feeling, like the danger, than solo player plays all his, and then the bad guys go, and then you go, and then the bad guys go. Because I sometimes wipe the map. I mean, if you get first shot every time, sometimes you just get lucky and you wipe out the opponent, and there is no enemy phase. Or there might be, but they might have just one character left. So I have found that Sean Sutter's random chart per scenario, because he tweaks them. They're not all identical. They pertain to that particular scenario. They really up the danger and the thrill and the risk game. And so I'm taking that and I'm slowly converting some of those. I'd like to do all of them, but I'm doing my favorite ones. I'm doing those so that a solo player will be able to play them. And I will be videoing those soon. And so that brings me to my next item that I wanted to share with you. Hey, Cal Venoni, I hope I pronounced that right. Venoni 1, Venani 2. You can tell me which one it is. Cow battle pigs are great. Yes, they are. Can't have enough battle pigs. A side story, I was at we have a store here in town called Gigabytes. About once a quarter, they have a swap. Cal Venani, thank you. They have a swap meet where gamers bring the play, and you can find like incredible deals. Months ago, I found a guy. He was selling some of his Relic Blade stuff because he just never played it, and he had a Battle Pig collection of like 5. I think there's 4 or 5 minis in there, and he was selling it for $5. I was like, "Give me!" So now I have my largest warband in Frostgrave and Relic Blade. My largest collection is now battle pigs. I just love them. Their positioning, their sculpting, their facial expressions, their weapons, their musculature. They're like big and bulky up top, and they have these little tiny legs. They're incredible. All of Sean's sculpts for all of his miniatures are hands down. They are my favorite fantasy miniature sculpts, and I will go on record as saying that. You just go to relicblade.com, one word, relicblade.com, and go browse his miniatures. And you just, if you're like me, you're going to be blown away. All right. So anyway, how will I be running those solo campaigns? They harken back to the original pig-faced orcs. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. How will I be transferring my solo Relic Blade above ground? Well, I've played. First off, I don't have enough tiles to do, and I don't want to do foam, but I don't have enough outdoor type tiles to cover a 2x2. So I sat down a few weeks ago and I was really pondering on this, and I finally decided that because I have this 3D printer here, that is a Bamboo. That is a very fast printer. I have been a printing machine for the last month or 2 months. I keep that thing running. Now, it's not running right now. because we're having water in Atlanta, and we frequently, not frequently, but we often have a power outage or the power will go out. And it can recover from a power outage. But if the power outage is more than like 30 minutes to an hour, the heated bed cools down and whatever's on there gets loose. And so when you it can restart, if it's just a quick power out and then back on, it'll keep the plate hot. It sends me a message. There's an actual app, for the Bamboo. Uh, there's an actual app right there that will tell me what I'm printing, the percentage. You can see that I've already finished printing something here, 100%. If it pauses or power goes out, I get a notification and I can restart it. If it goes out of filament, I get noticed, and it will keep the bed hot as long as the power doesn't go out. It'll keep the bed hot, so I can go change the filament at my leisure. I've had it go out at like 1 a.m. and woke up the next morning and the bed was still hot enough to keep the piece intact. And then you just reload the filament or press resume, and it picks up right where it left off. And I used to have two Ender 3s back here, two Ender 3s. And the Ender 3 is a great printer. It's like $100. You can get them for about $100 these days. Here in Atlanta, I frequently see them at Micro Center, and I think they do mail orders. So if you're living in a place that you don't have a Micro Center, check it out. Micro Center frequently sells the Ender 3s for about $100. And the Ender 3 is a great printer, years and years. But I saw the Bamboo P1P demoed, and I did some research on it, watched some videos of it being assembled, unpacked, and stuff like that. And I just decided my issue was time. The Ender 3 it wasn't slow to me because I didn't have anything to compare it to. Now that I have this thing, I am like, oh my God, I cannot believe I would wait 14 hours for something to print, that this thing can do. I'm like, fuck, I'm not kidding. It's that fast. Um, anyway, I've been 3D printing a lot of terrain that will go on my Relic Blade solo upstairs campaign. I would go with something sort of cartoonish, something with bright colors, something that matched the style of Relic Blade, but something I could also still use with Frostgrave. I don't want to cover everything in snow because that does limit it to a snowy setting. But I found this guy on My Mini Factory, myminifactory.com, and I'll try to remember to put a link with the video description when I finish this video. But his name is, I don't know his last name, it's Adrian, Adrian. He has a lot of the terrain on My Mini Factory in terms of buildings and structures. A lot of it's the same. It has this like fantasy cottage look to it. There, a lot of it comes in a like ruinous version and non-ruinous version. I have been looking at Adrian's designs, and they're really well done. I like them. He also designs them so that they can be printed with an FDM without supports. An FDM versus, say, a resin printer, which I have a resin printer, but I started using it last year and I quickly discovered something. I am extremely allergic to super glue. If I don't wear a full mask when I'm using super glue, my eyes get puffy, my face gets itchy, I can't wear my contact lens. I react to super glue. And as a gamer, you got to understand it hurts because sometimes I have to have friends glue my minis together or my son, um, if I really need it done, because the mask will offer protection, but not a lot. I can do like 3 or 4 minis and then I got to stop. If I do 30 minutes of gluing minis, it will get to me. So resin printers, I discovered late last year when I got me one and started using it. The resin produces vapors or fumes that I'm not reactive, but I do react to them. But if resin gets on my skin, because I made a mistake, I was getting something out of the resin bath and I had gloves on. I wear gloves and I have eye protection. I wear eye protection when I mess with resin. So I was lifting it out and something dropped and it splattered a small bit of resin on my wrist right where the glove. And I got a towel and I wiped it off and I ran upstairs and I soaked it and thought, okay, I'm okay. The next day, it was like a burn. It was like a, I don't know what you would call it. It was a reaction, a skin reaction to resin, which that hurts because the resin printers do an incredible print job. Um, they do an incredible print job, especially for miniatures. So I'm not messing with resin. I have decided I'm going to sell that thing and be done with it. So I went on a hunt for, I figure if I'm going to be stuck with 3D printer FDM versions with filament, I want to get something that's fast and something that is high quality, that really does a good job. And so did my research, did my due diligence, watched a lot of videos, talked to a lot of people, asked questions, and I chose the Bambu P1P, and I had zero regrets. Fast, the quality of parts, I don't even know. I mean, you might be able, I can see the filament lines because I'm really up close to it, but I mean, it is, the layer lines are almost invisible. It's so smooth. Um, this this is an ale or a beer. Uh, uh, I forget the story behind it, but it's it's somebody who uh, brews, and it's the tunish looking little building. It's three parts, 1, 2, 3. This printed in 5 hours. This was like 4.5, and this was like 2. So this would have taken 2 days, maybe longer, to print with the Ender 3, and it had the quality um, of that this has. I don't know if you can see, the layer lines are so small, and this is at high. This is at 100% speed. That printer has two speeds above it. It has, and then it has something called Ludicrous, and I put it on Ludicrous once to print 2 tiles. It printed a tile in 2 hours on 100%, and 3 hour. No, I'm sorry, 3 hours in 100%. 2 hours in Ludicrous, and the quality of the print was almost identical except for the middle layers where you can tell it sort of, it goes, it must do something. It wasn't it wasn't bad. You could see it was smooth, but the filament lines were thicker, I think, so it sped it up. Um, I'm still around with it, but if I could print these at ludicrous speeds, oh my gosh, I would have a table of these things. But I I don't have any affiliation with Bambu. I get no kickback, no affiliate links or whatever they call it. None of that. I'm telling you, that printer is so awesome. I want another one. I don't know if I'm going to buy another one because could I keep 2 of those printing? I could, but eventually it comes to a point where, like, do I need to really print out any more stuff? I have printed out 5 pieces of this to start out with. All are Adrian's designs. So what I do is I print them out in gray and then I prime them in black. After they're primed in black, I give them a solid white wash, a heavy white wash, white dry wash, excuse me, over the black. That allows the seams and the grooves and the detail work still have that black inside, because then I will go over the white with what colors I go with for the rooftops and the brickwork and things like that. Let me show you this one. This one's called, I don't know what this one was called. I'll have to hunt it up. This one right here is ready for me to paint. It isn't together yet. It is in pieces. This one's in 4 pieces. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and the bottom is 4. And yeah, I think you can see where the floors are broken. 1, 2, 3, 4. This bottom piece took 10 hours, and then everything else was less than that. So this one took pretty much a day, round the clock printing. I tend to save the biggest stuff for when I go to bed, because I love the fact that you go to bed at 11 o'clock at night, or I go to bed at 11, and when you wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning and you come downstairs, you have a piece that's done. You weren't watching it, watching a 3D printer is kind of like what they say, watching water boil, paint dry. I love going to bed and then waking up to a full piece like this. So this is the piece I'm going to be painting probably today. I'm going to get started on it. I'm going to see how long it takes me to paint something like this size, and then that will tell me kind of for some of these smaller ones. This is actually one of the bigger. Actually, I do have one that's a slightly taller than this, but it's thin. It's like it's called the Apothecary Tower. It's tall and thin, so it's taller, but it doesn't have as much solid base as this one. So I'm going to be painting those, and then instead of a tile base for the ground, I found this for $12. I will put a link in the description below. I found it on Amazon. It was perfect. It is a double-sided hard dry erase mat. It opens up. Let me see if I can take a step back so you can see it here. It opens up to a grassy green side right there and a cobblestone street side, which is perfect. I can do city, I can do out in the country, and it is gridded. I wish they had sold it without the grid. I may reach out to them and say, hey, can you make one without the grid? I don't know, that they may or may not do it, but the grid won't bother me. But these are going to go, on here. Now, ideally, I want this to be a 2 foot by 2, which is what my Relic Blade solos and my Frostgrave solos fit on. But it's not quite. It's 26 by 22. I don't know why they didn't make it square. They could have taken 2 inches off the 26, added it to the 22, and they would have had a 24 by 24. But it is 26 by 22 inches, which will still work for me. It's fine. But it was $12 on Amazon. I will again put a link below. It comes with a case to hold it in if you don't want to, if you just don't want to throw it on the shelf. And you'll be seeing this right here. It's called It's very simple. It's called Role Playing Game Board, and it's by a company called Hexers. And so that is what I'm going to be using for the upstairs. I call it for the above ground Relic Blade solo scenarios. I may use it sometimes for Frostgrave. It'd be neat if they made a snow one. And again, I may reach out to them and ask them if they could expand on this, because for $12, it's an absolute, I think it's a steal for a playing board. Here's my 2 cents. Let me say this before. Most skirmish games tend to be played on like a 3x3 or a 4x4 or a 4x6 for like Warhammer. I think it's 4x6. And what I typically find in war games is when it's 3x3 or larger, a lot of times the first 1, 2, 3 turns is just getting your miniatures moved up in position. A lot of times they're out of range, which is good for strategy, tactical type games. But for games like Frostgrave and Relic Blade, where it's all about the combat, the action, getting in there and fighting, I typically find that a 2 foot by 2 foot board is perfect. I have a lot of gamer friends. One of them, I'm gonna give Mac a shout out. Mac also tends to play on 2x2s, and he and I think alike there. Every time I've played a 2x2, the game goes quick. It is fast and furious and over. And I don't want to play a war game for 3 or 4 hours. I have, but a 3 or 4 hour war game, I would rather play 2-hour games that are different or the same, and just you have better, maybe you could swap out your warband or whatever. So when you watch me play these solo games, like especially the Frostgrave, I have cut the Frostgrave down to it's going to be less than a 2x2 most of the time. Relic Blade is played on a 2 foot by 2 foot surface. Would you print out the proper board size? Or would you printing out a 2 foot by 2 foot set of tiles? I could do it. I don't want to, because tiles have to be stacked and stored. Whereas look at this. This thing is perfect. It's just, could I do it? Yes. And maybe I will. If I find tiles that might say lend themselves to a frosty environment, yes. What I don't like to do is take a piece of terrain like this, and then paint it up and then hit it with snow effect. I don't mind, but you basically, once you hit it with a snow effect, you can't do anything else. You can't play it without it having that snow winter feel. You can't play it on green grass; it would look kind of weird. So I'm just thinking those could be custom with various elements. They could. The gentleman who makes my 3D printed tiles that I use for I use a lot of different 3D printed tiles. I use Fat Dragon Games for like dungeon tiles. I have a bunch of those printed up, and I use Diorama to print. I use those for the Frostgrave solo game that I'm playing. And what other ones? I have another set I bought called Dungeon Blocks. And at first, I was totally taken with Dungeon Blocks. They're terrain, and they all have this square piece that's printed on the bottom, and they fit into holes. You print out this it looks like a grid, and the grid has holes that are a certain square size, and these pieces slot in, and it holds it so they don't shift around. Really, really cool mechanic for the tiles. What I found was when I started printing them, you got to print a ton of them because most of them are like not one by one, they're like 1.5 by 1.5, or they're 2 by 2. If you want to do a 2 foot by 2 foot, that's 24 inches by 24, or 12 by 12, doing the 12. You got to print out 144 tiles to fit into that grid. And you got to print the grid big enough and store it somewhere. And so, long story short, sorry, the Dungeon Block tiles are really, really cool, but I started on it and I just sort of was like, this is going to take forever to get what you want. And there is a variety of tiles. There's stairs and chests and doors and walls, but you would have to print so many walls and so many door ones in order to make a nice dungeon out of it. It didn't appeal to me. I'd rather use 3D printed, ready to go terrain and a flat board or some sort of mat, neoprene mat for the playboard. I don't know. Hope that answers your question. Well, listen, I've been going 42 minutes, so I'm going to cut this one off before we hit the 45-minute mark. Thanks for joining me, Cal. Thanks for being my sole companion here for live discussion. I'm going to try to do this more scheduled in the future so that I can share the time and date, and then maybe more people can pop up and say hello, and I can say hello back and answer some questions and stuff like that. So today is Thursday. I also wanted to do these on Friday, but today with the bad weather in Atlanta, I was just like, let's just do this because I'm not printing and I can't really do anything outside right now. I can't paint, can't prime anything. So I decided, let's do the live stream. All right, guys, thanks for joining. Oh, Jedi Jim tuned in. All right. Hey, Jedi Jim, I remember you. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again next week with another live stream. Until then, everybody have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. And shoot me an email at jimsworkshop@fastmail.com if you have any questions, comments, or needs, or just want to reach out and say hi. Bye, everybody. Oh, Craig Stevenson got there late, Jim, but looking forward. All right. Everybody's chiming in now. All right. Bye, Craig. Bye, Jedi Jim. Bye, Cal. Bye, everybody else. Everybody, take care.